Hello, this is John from caveofprogramming.com. In this tutorial we're going to take a look at the basics of reading text files in C++. So I've got a file that I created here in the project root directory called test.txt. In this tutorial I'll do the same that I did in the last tutorial where we were writing text files, and there I just use the name of the file. So if you just use a file name, you don't use the file path, then the location of the file is going to be the program's working directory, and that's going to be the actual project folder in Eclipse by default. So you can specify full path names to your file open method here, but I'm not going to do that here, partly because it depends in any case on your operating system what a file path name should look like, whether it uses forward slashes or backslashes. I'm just going to stick with the file name here. So I've created this test.txt, and it's in my project's working directory, and if you do need to find that, you can just right click the project, go to properties and resource, and you see the project location right there. And reading text files works very similarly to writing text files. So I'm going to include here, I'm going to include fstream, and again this could be different on your system, so if you don't have this, do a Google for your particular system. I'm using the GNU compiler, and we've got using namespace standard, and I'm going to create an object of type ifstream, that's input file stream, let's call it infile. I'm going to need a name for this, so let's create a string. Let's call this infile name equals test.txt. Then I can do infile.open, and I can supply the file name infile name. As with outfile, if you want, you could use fstream, and then when you did the open, you could do ios : in to say that you're opening the file for reading. So you could just use the basic fstream class and then specify whether you want to open it with ios out or ios in for writing or reading. But it's easier to use the ifstream input file stream class. Once we've opened it, we can say if infile.isOpen, then we can go ahead and read stuff from it. And if it isn't open, as in the last tutorial, we can output an error message saying cannot open file. Let's put a colon there, let's put in file handler. So sorry, in file name from the file name string here. So once we know that it's open, we mustn't forget to close it, so I'm going to put that in first. Which I like to do, so I'll put the close in first, and then above that we can read from the file. Now we could use stuff like the extraction operator, the get from operator that we've seen with cin. If we do that, let's just take a look at that briefly. Let's have a string which I'm going to call line, because in a minute I'm going to use it to get lines, and I'm going to do infile get from extraction operator, which we use as cin, get it into the line, and let's do cout on line. But by default this kind of splits on separate tokens delimited by space. So if I run this now, we're only going to get this, we're going to get the first word before the first space in there. So there are various ways we can deal with this, and we're going to delve into this a bit more in the next tutorial. But the easiest thing to do if you want to read the file line by line is just to use a function called getLine, which is in fstream here, it's in the fstream include. Let's say getLine, and we supply the stream you want to read from as the first argument, and then the next argument is the string that we want to read into. So if I do this now, we're going to read the first line. Let's run this. So we've got this is a line, but there are 3 lines in there. So how do we read all of them? Well, we want to do something like this. We want to say while in file, let's say while not in file dot EOF. EOF stands for end of file. So while we haven't reached the end of the file, then we can repeatedly get a line, and here we're choosing to output it, but we could do whatever we want with it. And this successfully reads the entire file. Now, it turns out that you don't need to use this EOF. The reason is that infile has a couple of very useful overloaded operators. We haven't looked at operator overloading yet. We are going to look at that later on. But you can overload operators like equals or plus in C++ to do new and interesting things. And for these file streams, for ifstream, the not operator, exclamation mark here, has been overloaded, as has the what we call a bool operator. And so we can actually say, because of this bool operator being overloaded, which we'll look at later on in this tutorial series, we can do while in file. And so as long as this returns true, so it's actually running some code in this class, which tells us when the file has reached the end of the line. It looks weird because it looks as though we're checking to see if this object itself, if this variable has a 0 or a null value in it. That's what it looks like, but that's not what's happening. This is actually invoking some code that tells you if it's still possible to read more stuff from the file when we do this through the magic of operator overloading. So the bottom line is, without worrying about that too much, you can just do while in file, and that works just as well. And so this will return false when you've finished reading lines from the file. So that's enough for this tutorial. Do have a go at just reading a text file line by line, and we'll take a bit at some slightly more complicated file reading in the next tutorial. So until next time, happy coding.